Thank you, Panos. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. As Panos said in very eloquent Greek, my name is Ron Johansson, and I'm from the Australian Cinematographers Society, where I'm the national president. And I'm here with my colleague from the New Zealand Society, Mark Swedell.
All black.
And what was that?
All black.
Yeah, you see? All Blacks. God damn it. What about the Wallabies? Anyway, I digress, and I'm eating into the sunny time. Before I do begin, I just would like to acknowledge the Greek Society, the GSC, for putting this wonderful program together over this 2 days, and then we move on to an IAGA conference. And without the help and the support of the Greek Society, it just wouldn't happen. So congratulations to them, and to any of you who are members of the Greek Society. And if you're not, then you should join, because it'll be good. You'll get a lot out of it. And these events also don't happen unless without the support of many, many wonderful sponsors, not only here in Greece, but also worldwide. The societies from all over the world depend on sponsors for their support and their ongoing continuance of things within the industry to young aspiring cinematographers and us old crotchety cinematographers. So without further ado, I would like to thank one of those particular sponsors, SONY, who are here today, and invite you to listen with great intent to what they have to say, and don't be afraid to ask many, many questions. Florian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning from my side. My name is Florian Wettich. I'm coming from Munich, Germany. I'm a member of the German Society of Cameramen, but I'm not a cameraman. I'm a DIT in the association there. I would like to thank the IMAGO and the G.S.C. to have us here. I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to learn a little bit, to meet probably friends, make some friendships here, and thank you for your hospitality so far. It's been really great to be here. With me there is Ainara, right here. She's the European Marketing Manager of the cinematography product at SONY Europe, as well as Harris. I'm not sure if you're in here. He's the local salesperson of SONY Greece. So we have a few people here that hopefully answer all your questions. So what I would like to do in the next couple of minutes or the next half hours or so is I would like to introduce a little bit to the SONY camera systems. I try to keep it less sales driven, more user driven. So I try to give it a cinematic approach. That's the word I was missing. And as you see in the letter F, there is already like a thing that's called film inside these cameras. So there's a big try of making it more filmic, even using a Sony or an electronic camera. Just to introduce what I'm doing with Sony, I'm a so-called independent certified expert. That sounds very big, but actually I'm just a user. So I'm not working for Sony on a daily basis. I got hired for shows like that to share my experience with these cameras with you. So I'm of course using other cameras as well, and from that point of view I'd like to get these cameras a bit closer to you. So what I would like to cover is just introducing the F series cameras. There are 3 models at the moment in the top range. There are smaller models or previous models that I don't cover, mainly the F5, F55. We do have an F55 camera outside, as well as the F65, which is right here on the floor. So if you have a break in between the sessions today, feel free to join us and continue your questions on the products. Put your hands on the cameras, and that's why they're here for. So it's give you the chance to have some hands-on as well. I would like to cover the cine-style operation of the cameras, because I had the feeling most of the historical Sony experience is more engineering, and people expect a Sony camera to be very technical, lots of menus to have to be set up to make it look right. And I think that changed a lot, and I'm not sure how intensively used the latest generation of Sony cameras is here in Greece, but I'd like to show you a quick setup of a camera to make it ready to shoot in a cinematic approach. It's really easy nowadays. As well, we have some footage with us. It won't be the absolutely latest stuff, but it is something to give you an impression how the cameras can look like. So we have footage from the F65 as well as from the F55 with us. And of course there is time for questions, and even if I lose my line or talking serious numbers and you don't get it, please feel free to ask questions anytime. So there is a big number on the lineup of Sony cameras. It's called 4K. And there's a big discussion about 4K, and I'm not going into the 4K domain overall, but all the cameras I show you now are capable of some sort of 4K. And you might realize that there's different flavors of 4K, and also these cameras give you a different flavor of 4K. And if you use it in 4K or not, it's a different discussion. But all of the cameras I'm going to show you now are capable to shoot 4K. Even the smaller ones, like the F5, there is a way of doing 4K with the entry-level model of that series. So the F5 camera, just some numbers. It uses a Super 35mm sized sensor. So by telling that, it's not a 4x3 sensor. So you have to know that all the Sony cameras don't have a 4x3 sensor. It's a Super 35 with sensor, and it's that way because there is a specification on the cinema side that gives a weird aspect ratio of 1.9 to 1, and that's how all the sensors are at Sony. It's the sensor aspect ratio. The sensor has the aspect ratio as the projector in the cinema. Why is that? Different story, but it gives you, of course, all the opportunities to do a digital cinema package, and of course the aspect ratios that you can drive from that. So there is some ideas behind that aspect ratio, but you have to be aware that this is not a 4x3 sensor. It comes with actually two mounts. I will explain that a little closer later on, but it comes automatically also with a PL mount, PL positive lock. It's the standard lens mount you already all know. It's the one the film cameras use as well. And it offers a variety of onboard recording possibilities, different codecs compression schemes. I don't want to bore you, but I will explain it a little later. So you have a variety of recording options with that camera. Introducing a codec called XAVC. It enables the camera to shoot up to 180 frames per second high speed. It's not a free meal, it's 2K. So if you want to shoot 4K, the maximum speed is 60 frames per second. The bottleneck on all these cameras is the data rate in the end, and since you have a high resolution of the sensor coming off, to write it to the media, you need a lot of bandwidth. So if you have the high resolution, you can do 60 frames per second. And if you reduce the resolution, you can go a lot higher, up to 180 frames. And if you use the raw recording option, which is that little thing on the back which becomes a part of the camera, you can go even higher, up to 240 frames in 2K. An important thing to know is that if we're talking 2K, there are two different flavors of 2K. Is the flavor you remember maybe from Sandeep's presentation yesterday. It's a windowing on the sensor, so a smaller portion is used to get 2K, but then your angle of view changes. But it also offers you to have 2K with the full width of the sensor, so your angle of view does not change. So if you have a 25mm lens and you just want to do one shot 2K, 240 frames for example, you just switch the camera to 240 frames and the angle of view stays the same. You don't have to swap the lenses. But if you want to use, let's say, a Super 16 lenses and use a smaller area of the sensor, you can also use a cropped version. So there's a lot of possibilities that comes with these cameras. There's another camera called F55. it looks almost identical. Actually, you only see the difference in the lens ring. There's a silver in the black one, and that's the only visible difference. The operation, the size, the way of shooting it is exactly the same. It offers exactly the same features as I just described of the F5, plus it can do 4K XAVC, which is a ready-to-use compression, onto the onboard S/S cards. You know the S/S cards maybe from other cameras, like there's one here, using this kind of cards. So you don't need to have a RAW option to do 4K. On the F5, the onboard recording is 2K or HD only, and if you want to do 4K, you have to use the RAW option. But here you have a choice of having 4K on board, or of course using the RAW option. And there's a big difference in the imager. Even though it doesn't look different, the camera itself, it's a so-called frame image scan imager. So it scans the image in a different way. I'd like to explain it to you if you're interested. Frame image scan, some people call it global shutter, is basically the improvement of the sensor readout to avoid jello lines or uneven exposed images. I have some examples for you if you want. It also has different color filters on the sensor to open up as much as possible the possible color space of that sensor. So it's a more cinematic design by definition, while the F5 is more like optimized for television-oriented production. It doesn't mean you can't shoot cinema with the F5. It just is more optimized for that, and the color space is slightly, I call it optimized, limited in a way. So the color gamut of the F55 matches pretty close the color gamut of the F65. So it's designed to capture colors that might be illegal for television, but if you have color correction, you might be able to use it for a film out or for a digital cinema package. There's another feature, you can do 2 recordings at a time. It's maybe not the main feature. You can do a 4K as well as an HD proxy on one card. And if I say proxy, it's a 50 megabit MPEG, so it's a very serious proxy. So by just managing and handling one card at a time, you can do 2 versions, like an offline version or an HD version that you're going to use today, and you keep the 4K version for your archive or for a film out that might be later on. F65, it's been around a little bit longer than the 2 other cameras. I'd like to mention it just because people think it's the same camera but bigger. It's not. There's a good reason why it's bigger. It comes with an 8K sensor. So at the same dimensions of the other cameras' sensors, it's like 4 times the pixel. So there is a difference in the images derived from an F65 and an F55 or F5. It uses high dynamic range, of course. All the other cameras are, in the meantime, also very, they can capture a really high dynamic range. SONY says it's 14 stops. I'd like to invite you to prove it yourself. Never trust the manufacturer's numbers. But on the F65, for example, I've really seen pretty close to 14 stops already. And the last stops is always a discussion. Is it a stop or isn't it a stop anymore? So on this camera, we also have an example that shows you a lot of the latitude of this camera. And the F55 is just slightly off that. So it's a really powerful system that we offer. It uses SR memory. That's a bit boring for you, but important to know is that all the raw recordings, as on the F65 as well on the F55 or F5, is a 16-bit linear raw data. So we capture everything the sensor derives. There's nothing kind of changed from the sensor data. It's what comes in and goes out. There's just a mathematical compression to it. It goes up to 120 frames, and it has built-in infrared and ND filters. They are very flexible. Also, the other cameras have internal neutral density filters, but the F5 they only have 2, and here we have 4 So also a reason why it's bigger, because it needs some space to put all these little filters in there.